Hello and welcome back. Thanks for joining us again. Today we're going to have a look at a bit of kit that I've built, not an original idea before anyone starts screaming at me. It's a banjo and it's for supporting an extractor pipe at the back of the lathe. It's something that I've struggled with for quite some time. I saw another chap in the States who done a video on this. And we've taken sort of his idea, not that the banjo is his idea, obviously that's been around for a long time. But we've taken his idea and we've adapted it a little bit and changed it. We were thinking of doing a kit, but to be honest, there's so many different types of lathes out there, it really isn't practical. So we're just going to show you roughly how we do this, and it will be rough because there's nothing I find more annoying than very detailed plans telling you you've got to have a 25mm thick piece of wood, and you go into the workshop and for the life of you can't find a 25mm bit of wood. So what we're going to do is show you roughly how it's constructed, and then you can hopefully adapt that and use that on your particular lathe with whatever bits of scrap wood that you have about, and you will see that the unit that we've made is very much made out of scrap. So here is the unit. You'll see this is the banjo part underneath. We'll look at that in a bit more detail shortly. You'll see that I've got some plastic sections up here. These I have bought, but what we're making or looking at making today is the mount, this part here, to actually support this and get it in the right place. So what I'm going to do, rather than show you how to construct it, I'm actually going to deconstruct it, and then you'll see how we've done it. Firstly, what I'm going to do is actually turn this on. I've got a little bit of scrap in here and we'll just turn it, and we'll hopefully be able to show you that most of the chippings actually go straight down the extractor instead of coming towards me. So my apologies for the noise because it is noisy. Let's see what happens. So hopefully, as you've seen there, it doesn't stop all the chippings coming towards me, but a lot of them go down there. But certainly all the dust that's created from here when I'm using something like the bowl sander is pretty much straight down there. So now let's focus on the banjo part itself and how we've constructed that. So I'm going to take off the plastic sections, and these are sections that I bought. That's that one there. I did find another one that's really quite useful, which is this one here, and that is actually a fitting off a planer thicknesser, and that again fits quite nicely onto there. If you've got something specific, if you've got like long spindle work, this is really quite handy, and you can move that up and down the lathe to take most of the chippings and dust out of the way. I've got that fit in there. If you've used these pipes, they are supposed to be flexible pipes, but you'll know if you've got one. They're the most inflexible things you've ever come across, and getting them in the right place is not that easy. So this is the bit of kit that we made, and I'll undo this and show you how it works. It's basically a flat plate with a hole in the back, 100mm cut out there. It's on a banjo, so it works pretty much like the banjo and the tool rest that you use on the lathe anyway. And it's got two little wing nuts at the back there that adjust, so you can actually tilt that backwards and forwards and get the final adjustment on your pipe correct, and then just tighten it by hand again. The other thing that we've adapted this to do, unlike the other ones that we've seen people make, is, and this depends on how your lathe is constructed, we've made ours so it can actually just lift straight out from between the lathe bed there. To pop it back in, it just pops down, twist that section round, and that can be tightened up again, as you can see, like that. So let's have a look at the individual parts a bit more closely. They'll all vary depending on what type of lathe bed you've got, but basically we've got an old block of ash and a bolt that slots through like so. This one happens to be a hex key fitting on the bottom, but it doesn't really matter. We've put a hole in, we've made it the right width so it will drop between the lathe bed, turn round, and then can lock in place. That means it's slightly more fiddly to fix in place, but it's dead easy when you want to remove it. You haven't got to go underneath the lathe bed on your hands and knees and fiddle around with it. You might like it, you might not. We prefer it this way. Then we've got a washer. It doesn't need to be that big. That's a particularly big one that we just happen to have. And a wing nut. Anyone that knows our stuff knows that most of our items are based around an M8 bolt and nut. So that's what we're using here. M8 wing nut. And that's the section that holds the banjo onto the lathe bed. The banjo part, as you can see here, just a bit of scrap plywood that I happen to have knocking around. What I've done is, I couldn't even tell you how long that is. You can make it as long or as short as you want. We're quite limited on space with the wall behind our lathe here, so this one isn't too long. And basically, we've cut a slot out the back. About 9 to 10 millimeters that is, and that allows for the 8 millimeter bolt to fit through and slide up and down in there. It's open at one end. You don't need to worry about hollowing that out, just cut it straight out on the bandsaw, and then we've screwed a little block onto the top here. This is just a scrap bit of ash, as you can see, screwed in the bottom there with 4 self-tappers. And what we've done at the end of this section is use 2 of our wood insert screws. These are the screws that come on the top of our bottle stopper kit. We do sell them, but you can get them in other places as well. You may have your own solution to this. It's not a problem, but this type of fitting, we've put one in that side, one in the other side, and we've just curved the top over there, because the next section that we're going to look at is the back. But having done that, we'll just put that in there, and we'll just quickly show you how this fits actually onto the lathe bed. So we can pop that through there, pop a washer on. As I say, it really doesn't need to be that big. That can drop down. I think I've tightened it up a bit too much there. There we go. That'll spin round. And that'll lock in place. That is pretty secure on there. That's not really going to go anywhere, but it doesn't have to take a huge amount of strain. It is only to support and direct the extractor pipe at the back. So the next 2 little bits we've done are another scrap bit of plywood with a hole cut out, the relevant size for your extractor, and there are obviously different size extractor pipes. Ours is 100mm, so we've got a 100mm hole out in this bit. And then on the reverse, we've got another scrap bit of ash that we had lying around in the bucket waiting to go in the fire. And we've just cut a little, it's actually a U shape, and we've turned it upside down because that U shape is going to fit over the back of our banjo section there. It is quite tight, but it's better tight than loose. We've put some holes in there. And this is then going to bolt through into the wood insert screws that we put on the other section. As I said, there are various ways of doing this. This is just the way we've done ours. So we've got a wood insert screw, and I then struggled and couldn't find anywhere a bolt with a wing nut on the end of it. So what I've actually done is just use M8 threaded rod, which I've cut a reasonable length. I've got a wing nut and I've glued it on the end and put another washer in there for good measure, and that simply is going to fit in there and tighten up that side, and the other one is going to fit in there and tighten up the other side. These wing nuts just mean that when it's actually on the lathe bed, it's just easy to adjust it backwards and forwards and then just tighten up. You probably actually only need to tighten one up, but there are 2 on there. And that basically is the construction. That is all that you need on there. We can pop that back on the lathe, twist that round, adjust it to the right section, tighten that up, and that is it. And that will hold your thing there. The other thing that you will notice that I've done when it comes to putting this plate on, I've put it on to one side. That's simply so when it's being used, I can tuck it here and tighten that up here, and the banjo is right next to the headstock, so it's out of the way when I want to bring my other banjo around here. You also need to make sure that this part is high enough that your other banjo slots underneath, so you can use it easily, and you can see I can get that banjo pretty close to anything that I might be doing at this part of the lathe. So we'll move that out and we'll just show you how we connect the parts back up again. The other thing that I've tried to do is to get the centre of this hole roughly aligned with the centre of my headstock here. Ours is, it might be slightly low, in actual fact higher is slightly better, because most of the chip-ins you'll extract will be from the top, because that's where your chisel is rather than underneath. But it's not critical, it's mainly for catching dust, and in my opinion if it catches chip-ins that's just a bonus. Now we've got the finished article, we'll just move it up here and we'll show you how easy it is to connect the part back onto this section here. And hopefully you'll find that's quite an easy and quick fix to holding your extractor pipe just where you need it. So instead of inhaling all the dust and getting absolutely covered in chippings as I do regularly, that will take most of the problem away for you. So there we go, that is the finished bit of kit. Of course, if you want to make it out of burr walnut, you can indeed do that and make it look much nicer, but it is basically going to just extract some of your chippings and hopefully all of your dust when you're turning. So I hope it's been useful. If you have any questions, drop us a message or an email, always happy to hear from you, and we hope to see you again at the next video. Thanks very much for watching, bye bye now.